everybody. Welcome to this webinar. We are so excited to be here with you today. My name is Jen McMillan, and I'm a part of the North Point Partner Team. And I am joined today by my two good friends from the Table Group, Bo and Cody. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jen. My gosh, this is going to be so much fun. We are here today to talk about the Working Genius and specifically how that can help churches.
Cool.
So you guys have been a part of the Table Group for a while now. Working Genius has been out for a year-ish now. And how are you guys seeing that working specifically kind of in the church world? Where do you see it finding traction and helping churches?
You should start because before we even had this partnership, we saw some data that made us just go, oh, wow, churches are really getting this.
Yeah, I mean, every day I would look at this report of like, who's buying this and who's using this? And it was pretty clear out of the gate that more than 50% of the orders that we saw coming in were like churches and nonprofits. Wow. So
amazing.
More than we expected. And certainly something that we tried to lean into was like, man, there's so many leaders and churches out there in this space that are saying this is valuable to us.
Awesome.
I think it's in part because we're dealing with like, this is about people's God-given gifts and how do they bring their talents to a team to get work done. So it was really cool to see that. And then you actually used it at a church before you even jumped over to Table Group.
So. Yeah, I worked at North Point Ministries right here where we're filming this at Buckhead Church. Right. And early on, we've known each other for a long time. He told me about the model. And then we're like, well, that seems like something that we could really use with volunteers. And so before we even rolled it out to our staff, before you even had team maps, we started talking about this with a core group of volunteers. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but fast forward, we've now certified, 300 people in Working Genius to be able to be facilitators and out there working with teams. And like 50 of those people are doing that with churches. They're church leaders who just see, oh my gosh, I get this. People have God-given talents. We should put them in the right seats, help teams get along better. So it's pretty cool. And you all are really at the tip of the spear. Partner team and churches who are figuring out, we want to get healthier. This is a tool that we think can help.
Yeah, it's so exciting for us to have this kind of partnership because our goal is to help churches be healthier and to help them have a greater impact in their communities. And this is just such a great way to help them do that. So let's talk about church staff specifically. Let's start there and just talk about what does it look like? How do you see churches implementing this with their church staff first?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so one of the ways we do this is it starts with the leader. It's really important that the leader actually understands what his or her God-given talents are. And really, this is, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's part personality instrument and it's part productivity tool.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting because one of the things you do is you learn about, hey, what are the things that give me joy and energy? What are the parts of my job that actually fill me up and bring me alive and how God wired me to participate on a team? And then you also find out what your working frustrations are.
Right.
What are the things that actually in the process of work, the machinations and activities of work that actually drain me.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
when you try to do them, drain other people.
Exactly. And frustrate them. And so for a church team, for the leader to say, hey, I understand what my God-given gifts are, what I'm bringing to the table, what I'm fulfilled by. I know what my weaknesses are. Let me look at my team that I'm surrounded by and say, I want to know what each of their areas of genius are. Right. One, so that I can put them in the right seat to contribute to our team. And then also let's have a vulnerable conversation about what actually frustrates us at work and what frustrates us at the job that we come to on a day-to-day basis, and maybe even make some adjustments based on that.
Yeah, as pastors, what we want to do, I think what all leaders want to do, they want to move forward, right? They're paying attention to their surroundings. So much has changed in the landscape of church, and they want to move fast, but they also want to take care of their team, right? Moving too fast can lead to burnout. Moving too fast can leave people behind. So we're managing this tension of how do we move forward without leaving people, back in the dust. And Working Genius has put language around, to your point, how innovation, how productivity can work by, I'm assuming y'all are familiar with the model, through the 6 different phases of work. And then what's so cool is for me as a leader, I know who to elevate at the different phases of work, who to really lean into their genius. And it's helped, it feels like it's a paradox, but it's helped us be able to move faster while caring for people better. So people are experiencing actually less burnout. They're being retained better. They're feeling more life and joy and fulfillment. And they're seeing this process of we're changing the future, we're changing the landscape of, church, business, culture.
Totally. And it really is sort of like if you went to any leader of any team, church or otherwise,
Yep.
and said, how would you like your team to perform better?
Right.
Like, how would you like to get more out of them and for them to be happier and more fulfilled
Yeah.
doing it?
What
It's
leader
like a
doesn't want
have your
that?
cake and eat it too situation. So when you can get people in the right seats, and these are the seats that were genuinely wired by God to
Right.
slide onto a team. Here's how I contribute. And then you're having great conversations about like, hey, you're great at enablement. Thank you for coming alongside and helping with that. Or, hey, I need your invention to come help us with this program or thing that we're trying to launch. So it's just it really is kind of a have your cake and eat it too situation, which I think is serving so many people.
Yeah.
Can I say two more things about that? We have plenty of words to say about all this.
Yes, bring them on.
One of the challenges anytime you're leading any team is helping the team members around you be self-aware. You know, they've got spinach in their teeth. It's easy to tell someone they have spinach in their teeth. It's another thing to say, you were just really disruptive in that meeting, or you're passive. And Working Genius has helped us have new language to be able to help coach. A lot of church leaders have young staff or staff who are figuring out their chops in leadership. I think that's really helpful. And just like a cheat code, I'm assuming, again, some of you have taken some of this assessment and working
Right.
with your team. You in 30 seconds could go do this as a leader. You could go write wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, tenacity, and say, all right, everybody, where did we get stuck? On our last project, our last endeavor, where did we get stuck? And just that simple question to remind us, okay, we're moving through these 6 phases of work. That's our role. Then let's address that. Do we need to bring somebody else into the fold? Does somebody else need to join this leadership team? Do we need to create more space for discernment because we're moving too fast? It's just been so
It's
helpful.
been incredible
That's
for our
incredible.
team and for all the people we've used it with.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Excuse me.
So, guys, you've talked a little bit about how this assessment is both kind of a personality assessment, but it's a little bit broader, different, because it impacts how people interact with one another in the workplace. So tell me about what you've seen with churches and different groups that have done this and taken this assessment. How are people actually finding their own fulfillment and joy, their purpose? How is this maybe giving language around it? How do you see this bringing life to these churches?
It's tempting when you sit in a seat like this, and we love Working Genius, to say, oh my gosh, it's changing the world of work and it's making everybody's job better. But the reality is, for any new tool or language, you do have to pause. And that can be disruptive. Here comes Sunday. Wherever you're watching, the Sunday is coming. And so to actually stop and say, wow, let's reconsider our org chart, reconsider our teams, it is work. And what like anything that's worth it, it's work. Anything that's worth it, it's a process. But what we have found is the more self-awareness fuel that you give somebody, the further, the faster, the more difference that they can make. And it's just worth it every time, isn't it?
Yeah.
To help people discover the self-awareness of where they're dragging other people down with their frustration, where they felt guilt and shame because they're trying to do something that they think they're supposed to do instead of really living in their genius. So if you're a leader and you're wrestling with that of, okay, it all sounds good and ideal, but it sounds like work, it is.
And I would even say that one of the objections you have to overcome a little bit is almost every church staff is using some version of an assessment,
Yes.
right? Like we all know,
We're
like,
inundated by all the different
and we love
options.
them all too.
Yeah.
We're like
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs and Enneagram. There's so many out there. StrengthsFinder.
Yep.
And what I think, if you could, because a lot of the resistance is, hey, listen, we already know our colors. I know I'm a
We have our
dolphin,
t-shirts.
whatever, whatever it is. But when you present this and say, listen, only 20% of this is about discovering, your own personality type, how you actually fit into a team. The 80% of this is a productivity tool. That's kind of what separates it from some of those other tools, is to say, this is about how work gets done. These 6 activities. So it's great to know that I have woo and that you are, have input or whatever it is, but what does that mean as it relates to how we get work done? And the simplicity of it, there are 6 categories.
Right.
We have 2 of them are genius, 2 of them are competencies, 2 are frustrations, and we can put people in roles that relate to the activity of getting work done. So when we talk about fulfillment and joy, it's really about being able to say, oh, it was freeing for me. It was liberating for me to go, oh, this is where I contribute to my team. This is exactly the thing that I do best that fulfills me.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing a lot of people. We even had a number, not more than once, a pastor has reached out and said, wow, I can't believe for my entire career, I felt shame or guilt or frustration because I wasn't an inventor. And thought something was broken inside of me, and I was
Because
looking
as
at
the
all
leader,
these
that's
other
what I'm supposed to bring to the
Exactly.
table.
That's right.
Yeah.
And like I thought something was broken because I couldn't sit down and come up with a new sermon series or something, and then to realize, man, God wired me in a way to contribute to my team in a different way, and it means that we need each other,
Right.
which is foundational in what we believe is that God created us to be in community, and so a pastor with certain geniuses needs to lean on a staff with that can help them out.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, that's so great. Man, this has been such a rich conversation. I'm so grateful we're getting to talk about this. But as we wrap up, I'd love to just know if you were sitting across from a church leader and having this conversation with them, and they were on the fence about whether or not it was worth the investment or the time and energy that it takes to really implement this, what would you say to them? What encouragement would you give to give Working Genius a try, or really just to invest in their staff and their church in this way?
I think it's interesting. Conceptually, I think people are motivated by reward or fear, or pain.
Yep.
And so I would always start with, hey, listen, imagine a church staff that's like vibrant,
Right.
that people are in the right seats, that they're loving their work. That's the best way. Like, hey, if you can get them there just by that, way to go. And if that doesn't work, you might go like, hey, I bet there's a lot of pain points on this team that if you could solve those, is that worth it for you? And then ultimately, one of the things I would like, the reason I love being a part of this conversation is we're in a really critical time in society where churches need to be the healthiest organizations in our communities, where we need teams that are functioning well together to bring people to Jesus. And more and more we're seeing that leaders, especially church leaders, this conversation around burnout is so prevalent. And I think Working Genius gives us this really fresh perspective about what burnout is about, because when we're talking about joy and energy, the things that fill you up, for far too long we thought about burnout as it relates to the amount of work that you do.
Right.
So when someone says like, hey, I'm going to take a sabbatical, they're like, I'm going to do nothing for 2 months, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to feel re-energized.
Not gonna work.
But that's not how we get fueled up. God wired us to be able to do things. So it's interesting. You can have someone who's 30 hours a week that's working in their working frustration and feel burned out.
Totally.
But you can have someone who's 60 hours a week working in their area of genius primarily, and they're alive and well, and they're thriving. And so I even had a conversation with a pastor friend of mine who was going on sabbatical, and one of the clarifying things was like saying, well, what are you going to do on sabbatical? And he's like, well, I thought I was going to do nothing or relax or whatever. And I was like, no, you should. You're a wonder inventor. It would be great for you to feel like you could invent things that you didn't then have to operationalize in the church. I bet that'd be really life-giving for you. And so I think, what's the thing? I mean, there's so much there to motivate a pastor, leader, team to say, hey, the rewards are great. Hey, these pain points can go away, the friction. And hey, we're going to have a lot fewer leaders and pastors who are needing a break or feeling like, I'm at my wit's end and I don't know if I can do this anymore. And that alone, if only a few pastors of these churches experience an uptick in their fulfillment doing the thing that God called them to, that alone is worth it.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Cool. Gosh, there's so much to say. The thing I'm sitting here thinking about is actually using Working Genius is vulnerable. And I would say, if you're not, as the leader, willing to be vulnerable, you shouldn't do it. Because it's going to create an environment where other people are it's going to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Their frustration is going to be on display. And if you're not willing to enter the danger and be the first one to say, I'll give an example for me. I'm an inventor galvanizer. Discernment is a competency for me, but the more leadership I have, the more discernment I actually need around me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of leadership is saying yes and no.
Right.
So sitting in front of my team and acknowledging that's kind of painful. A pastor should have discernment, right? It's the most spiritual sounding word. But if you discount that, you're just going to close up a wound. You know what I mean? You're going to put a scab over something that really could have created an opportunity to be trusting, create a beautiful dynamic with your team. So
Totally.
it's courageous work. It's worth it. And the people around you will be so grateful when you're able to go first. But leaders, we got to go first.
Yeah.
Be vulnerable.
Man, thank you guys so much. This has
course.
been such rich conversation. So grateful
Thank you.
to have you here with us
Thank
today.
you.
Yeah.